saw a familiar face walking on the avenue. Both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced like old friends often do.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of GungHo. It's December 12, 2018, and I have a special guest, and the topic is going to be the art of war, visible wounds, and PTSD. My guest is Frank Romeo. I just met him by chance, and I'm so glad I did, because he's got an incredible life and story and mission ahead, or ongoing. All right.
Ongoing.
Frank, you know what I want to do?
It's a work in
is I want to
progress.
set up, like right from the beginning, like when you were in school. I knew you were in Bayshore. Start there, and what happened to you?
Well, I grew up Long Island, Bayshore, and during the height of the war, like all of us, we went through high school. We grew up during wartime. We were war babies. We were post World War II, and most of our parents were in the war in one aspect or another. And we grew up the Korean War, and we grew up as teenagers during the Vietnam War. And I graduated in 1967 during the height of the ground fighting, as you know, in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia. And I was an athlete. I was all around the regular red-blooded All-American, happy-go-lucky. I wasn't the best student. I didn't care too much for book learning. I had no aspirations to go to college, but I passed, and you know, I was part of the government at the high school level, and I was part of our senior class government, and I had a lot of friends, and like everybody else, we just enjoyed just being teenagers on Long Island, you know, Fire Island, and partying, and the beaches, and the girls, and drinking, and we would just...
So you graduated in 67.
67, yeah.
I was 6 years ahead of you.
Yeah.
We had no idea there were dark clouds out there. All right, so you graduated, and how old are you then? 18?
I was 18.
And what did you do?
Well, the draft was coming. We all knew the draft was coming, and I didn't get into politics. I wasn't about political in any way. I didn't much care about what our government was doing. And I knew I was going to go into the military only because of the draft, and when we knew the draft was coming. We didn't know when it was coming. So then what the government, in retrospect, did, they pushed up our draft. You could join. Rather than join for 4 years, like a normal person signing up for any military, any branch, they pushed up the draft, and they allowed us to go in for 2 years. So rather than wait and see what was going to happen and take my chances and waste time, I had a lot of friends that were already gone. Bayshore has a rich history of military. We have a general, we have a rear admiral from Bayshore, we had a POW and MIA. So Bayshore had a rich history of military. And so I had no real reason not to go. And to be honest, I went out of loyalty to my friends. You know, my friends were going, and so...
Did you think at that time, coming out of high school, that we were really over there to fight against communism and for freedom and democracy for those Vietnamese people? Did you think that way?
No, there was no explanation. This was just blind. We were just going in blind. We were flying by the seat of our pants. We had no idea. There was no current events, so to speak. We didn't talk about Vietnam. We didn't talk about current issues in high school. We didn't talk about going into the military. The recruiters were coming, and the recruiters would visit us at Bayshore High School, and we would have assemblies with recruiters there. But there was no...
I'm talking about, all right, so you had no idea about communism and where Vietnam was, and there were two Vietnams. Neither did I. All right. So, but did you think overall?
Who would name two countries the same?
Yeah,
Vietnam.
Us. We would.
Yeah.
Did you think that it was the right thing to do?
As far as I was going, for me,
Yes.
it was the right thing for me to do only because I really didn't have another option. I wasn't going to college. I had signed up for college, but there was no way I was attending classes. I just went through the motions. And my friends were there. I had very close friends that I grew up with that had left already. Some were already in base camp. Some were already in Vietnam. I was writing letters back and forth to them. And I had no idea. I didn't know what communism was.
So you joined the Army.
Yes.
And when you got in the Army, was there any kind of indoctrination? Like, we got a lot, when I was going to boot camp and other training, we got a lot of indoctrination about communism and the Red Scare and the domino effect and all this stuff. Did you get any of that?
No, the Army didn't do that. Basically, everyone went through basic the same. Everyone just got dehumanized during basic for 8 weeks, and then you would get these specialty jobs. And some guys would go to airplane mechanics, and some guys would go to communications. Well, I went through specialty training, and then at that point during specialty training, I was given somewhat of an indoctrination. I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and they had a mock Vietnamese village. And they would just bring us in. Now, I come from Long Island. I'm in the suburbs. This is like culture shock. Grass hut society meeting in suburbia. Coming together and like, what's it all about? And so we would pretend to storm these villages. I mean, that was the best that we got. That was it. There was no classroom work on who the enemy was. There was no.
Were you left with the impression that you were going over there to fight guerrillas and that's it?
I was under the impression I was going there to fight for freedom for America, that I was going to go there and fight for my country because, again, we're first generation, my family, coming into America and then fighting in World War II, and we learned, this is America, right or wrong.
Did your dad fight?
My dad is World War II. He didn't go overseas, but he was World War II. He was a World War II soldier. Yeah.
My dad too was in the Army twice, but he never made it overseas because something happened really bad here. But he was in the Army twice, once during the Depression and once during the war. 9th Armored Division. All right, so yeah, we were raised that way. I was raised, your country, right or wrong.
Correct.
That's how I was raised.
Correct.
So I had no question really about going there. All right, so they gave you, we call it a military occupational status, what we were going to do. What did they say you were about to do, going out of, I guess it was Fort Jackson?
Going out of Fort Jackson, what I was going to do, I was going to learn. My specialty training was kind of special ops. I was learning how to blow things up and do secret things, and low crawl into villages and get out before people catch you, and they would fire live rounds over our head while we low crawled on the ground. So at 18 years old, I'm standing there and the flashers are going over my head, the marking rounds. And we were going there to fight the bad guys, the quote unquote. These were bad people. The idea, the concept, how I learned it was to, if I was going to survive, I had to be invincible. And I got that mentality. And I got that mentality that nothing could possibly happen to me. And at the same time, the bad guy, I had to, in my mind, dehumanize him. In other words, I was going to kill something that was less than human.
We did that. And we referred to the Vietnamese as gooks a lot. And that was a term that came out of the Korean War, I think, gooks.
Yeah.
It's a very derogatory term.
Absolutely.
So, yes, we did treat them like they weren't our equals. It was horrible.
Yeah, and it was a survival technique. I mean, really, if you think about it, if you're going to survive in combat, you have to be invincible. You can't go in there thinking you're vulnerable. Otherwise,
But
you
the
know,
truth is,
we are.
we are vulnerable.
We're more than vulnerable.
You know,
yeah.
we are. We're human.
Yeah.
So, after you finish your training stateside, did you go right to Vietnam?
Yeah, I went right to Vietnam. I shipped out of Oakland, California.
Did you go by plane or did you go by?
I went by plane. Now, I had a buddy. I joined in a buddy system with another Bayshore, and we went, another Bayshore student and a childhood friend, and we actually went through basic and infantry training together, specialty training together, and then he drew orders for Fort Lewis, Washington, and I drew orders for Oakland, California. And I left from Oakland, and I arrived in Long Binh, and that was the end of '68.
All right. And did they assign you to an infantry unit?
Yeah, they assigned me to a specialty unit, and I remember getting off the plane, and they said, go get something to eat, and you say, well, you know, where am I going? And just the guy said, you look up there. Look where you see all those lights. You see all those lights? That's where you're going tomorrow.
My experience
Young man.
was I was trying to find my battalion. I kept going north. You know, you could just jump on any helicopter or any plane, and nobody might question you. You
No.
just fly north.
No.
I finally got way up north, and I got close by to my battalion, and I'm waiting to go fly in by helicopter, and I'm asking the guy on the pad, "Where's my battalion?" He says, "You see those brown clouds out there?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That's where your battalion is." I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's an arc light." I said, "What the hell's an arc light?"
Yeah.
B-52 mission. I said, "Oh my God."
I know.
That's all right. So, Long Binh was a big place.
Yeah, Long Binh was.
And where do you go from Long Binh?
Long Binh, I spent a day at Long Binh, and then I got out on the first helicopter the next morning, and you're going to what was called the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. It was only in existence for 4 years, and it was designed for, Vietnam was a new type of warfare. It was jungle warfare, it was covert warfare. We didn't know who the enemy was. And so my unit was designed specifically for that type of helicopter, light, swift, and accurate, you know, was our motto. You know, we flew into firefights and we flew out of firefights. And my first day out in the bush, I'll never forget it. I was on a helicopter with maybe 4 or 5 other recruits, and we're flying into a firefight, a hot LZ, and the bullets are pinging on the steel plate under the helicopter, and that helicopter was not landing. We had to jump.
Oh,
That helicopter. It was the government's mentality was, you know, we can't lose $1 million helicopter. You know, the war's costing us enough. You know, recruits we could replace. You know, we have a draft.
Yeah. Sometimes we had to jump pretty far too.
Yeah, I
You
know.
almost think you're gonna break your ankle or something.
Well, I hit with this is rice paddies because we were in the Tet, and we were down in the Mekong. That's where I started fighting, and I hit these feet first, and it was like darts going into a board. You know, it was like, and I stuck up to my thighs in rice paddy mud. Meanwhile, the bullets are flying, and you know, and my first day, that first day, I didn't get to shoot nobody. I was too scared. That first day, all of a sudden, out of the sky come these 2 tandem Phantom jets. They were coming, it looked like straight down out of me, stuck in the mud. And at the last minute, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys better know what they're doing. And at the last minute, they turned up, and at another 45-degree angle took off and dropped an ordnance and wiped out half the village that we were fighting.
Yeah, that noise that they made when they did that was incredible. They came really low.
I know.
Oh my!
The afterburners pushed me back, and I'm stuck. Now remember, I'm stuck in rice paddy mud up to my thighs. The afterburners pushed me back, you know, and there I am, one day in combat, one day in country, and I'm stuck in mud up to my thighs, and I'm being blown back by the afterburners and that smell of burnt fuel.
Yeah.
If you close your eyes, you can probably still smell it.
Well, I don't want to go too much into my first day. It was not good. It was basically the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines had been ambushed inside the DMZ, basically wiped out, taken prisoner. And my battalion went in to help, and I got there at the end of the operation, and all I saw of 1-9 was Marines in body bags. I never saw body bags after that, though. We used ponchos after that.
Yeah.
That was my first day in
Yeah.
Nam.
I never saw a body bag.
All right, so you're operating in the Mekong Delta. You're in an infantry unit. You're specialized. And how long were you there before something terrible happened to you?
Well, we just finished Tet. So we just went through the Tet season. So come late spring, we were heading out because they didn't need us there anymore. So the next area of operation where they needed someone was on the Vietnam-Cambodian border. Ho Chi Minh and the Ho Chi Minh Trail and the supplies that were coming down through Laos and Cambodia were coming in. There was an area called the Parrot's Beak, and supplies were coming in. It was heavy, heavy jungle, triple canopy jungle. They flew us there. We jumped on helicopters once again and jumped, got to out there in the middle of nowhere and got out and lived in a jungle for the next 6 months, literally.
So you made it through 6 months without getting hit,
Correct.
but there came a time when that came to an end.
That came to an end.
Tell me
The
what,
good times,
tell us what
the
happened.
good times came to an end.
Yeah.
We were specialty units, like I said, and we would go out on 6 and 8 man ambushes by ourselves. You got to remember, we're 18 years old, and we would go out at night into the jungle or into the bush, and we would set up at night ambushes, like waiting for someone to come by. What are the chances
Like
of
the
that?
scene- like that
Like
scene
I'm
in-
on Hollywood and Vine, you know?
That scene in Platoon, they're waiting.
and I won't get into all the how many close encounters we had where we just kept quiet. We just there were too many of them, and there were only 6 or 8 of us. So we just sat there and we just hid and kept quiet and hoped they didn't smell us. And that day came, and there was a morning. We had gone into our second day of no food and water. We had nothing. And we were living out in the jungle, and we came to that second day where we needed supplies desperately. About a mile away was a clearing, and they were dropping supplies. Now, don't forget, we're on the border. We are in Cambodia, but we're not in Cambodia. So we really technically weren't going into Cambodia for 2 more years. President Nixon wouldn't say that until 70, but I was there. And so there we are, and we have no food or water, and they're dropping supplies back at the border. So we're 2 miles in, and we had gained ground. And there was intelligence that said that they were coming through this area. They were coming through the Parrot's Beak, through the Ho Chi Minh Trail and the Sihanouk Trail coming from the Gulf of Thailand. And they were bringing supplies in from the south and the north. And they were coming, funneling in through this one area. And our job was to find them. Our job was to go into Cambodia on search and destroy missions, find the munitions, find their base camps, and destroy them. Again, we're little units. We're a company, but we're broken down into small, different attack units. So this one morning that we had no food or supplies, someone had to go get our supplies. But we had gained ground. I had jungle rot so bad that I had no skin left from my shins on down. I literally, my socks were my outer layer of skin. And that had been like a month like that. So if I took off my socks, I peeled off the outer layer of my skin.
You know something? Everybody said then, anything that happened to us, whatever it was, the skin rotting, infections, it was all the jungle. I think it was Agent Orange.
Well,
all right, anyhow, go ahead.
we'll get into that because that area of operation was the most contaminated area in Southeast Asia. I found years later. So someone had to hold down this. We couldn't find them, and we gained ground, and someone had to hold down the point position, and I was the point man. And you know what the point man, for those that don't know, the point man puts himself out there in front of everybody else, risks his life, and we take turns doing that. Well, I was on point. My feet were bleeding. I had no skin. I figured, you know what? I'm gonna stay behind. Someone had to volunteer to hold down that point position. So I did. I volunteered, and that's when it happened. I was separated from my unit. A firefight started. I was separated from my unit. I was alone in the jungle, and I was surrounded by the Viet Cong, and they had me. They knew they had me, and they knew no one was coming for me. I was used for bait, but no one was coming for me. They couldn't. It was too big of a firefight, and they were too. everyone was pinned down, but I was alone. And they had me, and they shot me. They kept shooting me until they thought I was dead.
My God. When they left you for dead, were you still conscious?
No, I had gone under. I fought as long as I could. I had 2 grenades that I held. I used to sleep with live grenades, 1 in each hand, because I wasn't going to be taken prisoner, and that was my mentality. And I had those 2 grenades, and I had them. I shot as much as I could. I couldn't reload anymore. I was losing too much blood. I was going under, and I held off as long as I could. I knew as long as I kept firing, they wouldn't come towards me. But in fact, they didn't have to. You know, they kept shooting me. You know, periodically they would take a shot at me, and this went on for a while. And I held off as long as I could. Slowly, I started to drift off. Luckily, I didn't pull the pin on the grenade. I didn't have enough strength at that point, and then everything went calm.
How long do you think you were unconscious before someone found you?
I have no idea.
Did you wake up in that area?
I had visions of what I thought was going on around me. You can call them the white light experience. You can call it anything you want. I had visions of what was going on around me. I had visions of them coming back eventually to get me. And then I remember the plastic poncho liner, and then I don't remember anything. Then I woke up in Japan a month later.
Do you know how many days had gone by between being shot and waking up?
About 30 days. About 30 days went by. I was unconscious for 30 days.
And you had been shot multiple times?
7 times.
AK-47.
Hmm?
The only good thing about an AK-47 when you get shot, the rounds go right through usually.
Wow.
M16s, they bounce around.
I know. M16s are more brutal. I mean, if you're going to be shot by a weapon, you want it to go. And it's funny because that's how I healed later on in the hospital, because people don't realize when you get shot, you just don't have a hole here. You have a hole here and you have a hole back there. And between those 2 holes is a tunnel. You got the Lincoln Tunnel in there. And you know.
When you get shot with an M16, many times there's one hole.
It's one hole.
It bounces around and destroys a lot, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's, I actually know a few people that were shot with an AK and it went right through and they survived.
Went right through, yeah.
All right, so now you're back stateside. How long did it take you to recover?
Well, almost a year. I was too weak to travel, so I spent a lot of time in different hospitals around the world. I was in the first leg of the journey went from Japan, Camp Zama, Japan. Then I went to Alaska. I stayed in Alaska for a while at a medical hospital there because I was too weak to travel. Then from there, I believe I went to Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. I went to Walter Reed in Washington. And the home leg of the journey was St. Albans here on Long Island in Queens.
Tell me about the quality of the care that you got.
What happened was I was in bad shape. I was really in bad shape, and I had to take a lot of drugs. They gave me a lot of morphine. I was addicted to morphine. It saved my life, of course, but the operations I went through, and I remember being operated right on my bed because there just were too many soldiers. I was next to a guy that was hanging on an apparatus. It looked like a circus apparatus. It looked like the flying wheel, and this guy hung upside down because he had nothing on his back. He had his spinal cord was just hanging out, and he was hanging by straps upside down. So he was my bunkmate, and he was from Brooklyn. A really nice guy, Tony, and you know, we talked and whatever. He of course couldn't move, and I remember them. We were so bogged down, and there was so many veterans, and they did an operation on my leg. They cut open my leg right there in my bed, right there. They didn't even take me to the OR. I was operated right on my bed. I was given drugs. I watched it happen. I watched them cut open my leg, and you know, take out a
The
bullet.
morphine really helped with the pain, right?
Morphine is the way to go if you got to deal with pain, but it was so addicting. You know, they gave me pills too, so I don't know what they were giving me. I knew I was addicted. I was addicted to drugs. I was heavily addicted to drugs.
Did they take out all the bullet fragments?
I thought at the time they did, but they didn't. I still have bullets in me. And I found out years later. Actually, I had a job with the Long Island Railroad, and I lost the job because I failed a physical. I have a bullet in my spine, and it's in a vertebrae, and it's about 1/4 inch from my spinal cord. And it's been there for 50 years now.
We're coming down to just about a minute left, but I think we're at a good point. You're back stateside, you've been wounded terribly, you're recovering, but the bad thing is that you've been taking a lot of morphine. Did you get addicted to it?
Yes, totally addicted to it. Eventually, I continued to take morphine even when I left the hospital, and I was busted for drugs while in the military. And to make an example of me, they court-martialed me and put me in a stockade. And I actually was discharged from the Army, from the United States Army, from a prison cell.
Where did you get the morphine after you got out of the hospital?
I took any drug I could find. I took heroin, I took whatever drugs I could find.
Was the Army still supplying you with morphine after you got out?
No, they wouldn't give it to me because I was in uniform now. So once I got discharged from the hospital, they didn't discharge me from the military. They discharged me from the hospital. I was sent to West Point as a job, just a desk jockey, and I continued doing drugs there. And I'm probably the only person in the history of West Point to be busted for drugs. And they made an example out of me.
All right,
And they sent me
we're
to
going to
prison.
stop here.
Okay.
We're going to pick up there. It's incredible.
Line, 'cause friends are friends for